So let's talk about connectivity, and more specifically about the virtuous circle of connectivity. So this is a word we hear very often, but what's exactly connectivity? There are different definitions. For instance, the International Civil Aviation Organization defines connectivity as the movement of passengers involving the minimum of transit points, which first make the trip as short as possible, secondly, with optimal user satisfaction, and third, at the minimum price possible. We also have the International Air Transport Association, which has developed the Connectivity Index, which measures the degree of integration of a country into the global air transport network. We have some other organizations, private or public, which have each developed their own definition of connectivity, and each focus on a different aspect of it. For instance, the World Bank's definition is more focused on the economic impact of connectivity. But no matter what definition we look at, there are always four important concepts, which are always present in all of these definitions. The first one is the number of city pairs. So the more city pairs are available from an airport, the better this airport is connected to the rest of the network. Second one is the number of frequencies. The more frequencies you have between two destinations, the more connecting options this will give you at the hub. Third one is the connecting time. The shorter the connecting time, the more efficient the connection will be, and the more appealing it will be for the passengers. And fourth is the hub presence. The more global hubs we have in a region, then the better this region is connected to the rest of the world. So I think we can all agree that in Africa, there is a big potential to improve in all of these aspects. I would like to give you two examples. So the first one is regarding frequencies. And the numbers show that in 2018, 61% of intra-African routes are served with less than one daily flight. The second example is regarding hub presence. I think it's fair to say that the African hub potential is being exported outside of the continent. And why am I saying this? Because numbers once again show that 65% of passengers which are traveling from Africa to the world do it with a non-African airline. So let's now situate connectivity in the current context. Since the COVID-19 crisis struck, we have seen different forecasts regarding global economic recovery, but also aviation recovery. But the fact is, nobody really knows when the recovery will happen. But we know for sure that this crisis is unprecedented, and it has hit both supply and demand at the same time. And this is something unique. So regarding aviation, we have seen that supply has been hit because airlines have gone into hibernation mode, or unfortunately, some have gone bankrupt. We have seen also massive fleet groundings and network cuts. This has only been worsened by the travel restrictions imposed by the governments. If we now have a look at the economic aspect of the crisis, we have seen on the supply side big interruptions of demand and global trade flows and supply chains being interrupted. And this has also been worsened by unemployment and lockdowns. It's also well known to all of us that aviation and economic growth are strongly correlated. The numbers over the last years show that aviation grows twice as much as global economy. Studies also show that an increase in air connectivity has a direct impact on GDP growth. But how are exactly aviation and economy interconnected? So let's first understand how aviation impacts economy. So good connectivity stimulates passenger traffic. This traffic then has a positive effect on economy because you get business travelers and tourists stimulating the local economy. And finally, this stimulated economy creates more demand for international exchange. And now let's have a look at how, on the other way, economy positively impacts aviation. With connectivity, goods and services can flow smoothly between countries and regions. This stimulates the economic growth, and this growing GDP then fuels the organic demand for travel. So as we can see, aviation and economy are deeply interconnected, and economic recovery will definitely not happen without aviation. But at this moment, I would like to take a step back and understand where African countries stand compared to other countries in terms of connectivity and air travel. So this chart shows the relationship between GDP per capita and average annual trips per capita. We see that the largest the GDP per capita is, the largest the average annual trips per capita are, or in other words, the propensity to fly. As markets grow and develop themselves, they move to the upper right part of the chart. We can see on this upper right part countries such as the US, Germany, UK, or Australia. On the contrary, we have African countries on the lower left part in the area with the red circle. So we can see there is a big potential to increase propensity to fly on the African continent. So at this stage, I think it's fair to ask ourselves, what are the keys to further develop these African markets? And what can we learn from the historical development of aviation in Europe and the US? When European countries or the US had low propensities to fly and were moving to the upper right part of the previous chart, the networks consisted of strong hubs with low average aircraft capacity, the so-called gauge, and high frequencies. If we take the European example, we can think of hubs such as Frankfurt, London, or Paris. These hubs grew over the years with an average gauge of around 100 seats. And as markets got more mature, larger aircraft models were introduced. But this could certainly not have happened without efficient hubs, which allowed airlines to benefit from volumes and economy of scale, bringing overall unit costs down. Nowadays, hubs still play a very important role for connectivity in Europe, but we are also seeing low-cost carriers, which have, as opposed to the hub model, a point-to-point model. This means having bigger aircraft, but less frequencies. At the time, propensity to fly levels were lower in Europe and the US. There were no low-cost airlines, such as Ryanair, EasyJet, or Wizz Air. And the reason is just simply that market stimulation with low fares didn't work. And in fact, low-cost carriers appeared later with deregulation, which is a topic we have already mentioned. And just recently, in the last 15, 20 years, we are seeing an increasing importance of these low-cost carriers. So in the current development stage of the African market, strong hubs should be the way and the primary tool to develop connectivity in the African continent. So how do we address the structural challenges in African aviation, which will unlock the continent's connectivity potential? It's quite a complex problem, which obviously involves different stakeholders, such as policymakers, government, airports. But let's now focus on what can airlines do, and more specifically from the fleet and network perspective, which play a critical role in connectivity. There are big challenges, but the three main challenges I would like to discuss are, first, the relatively low load factors compared to the rest of the world, around 70%, low frequencies, as we saw before, and also few hubs on the African continent. And the fact is that the existing hubs have relatively low service levels compared to other hubs around the world. And what do I mean by this? What I mean is, in Africa, an African hub typically offers between 1 to 2 daily flights per destination on average, compared to 3 to 5 daily flights per destination on average for European, US, or even Middle Eastern hubs. How do we address this challenge? First, with the right-sized aircraft. With the right-sized aircraft, load factors will improve and airlines will be able to increase frequencies, developing the hubs. And this increase in frequencies will make them more attractive compared to the competing hubs outside the continent. So African airlines must favor frequency over capacity, and this will help address some of the challenges we have mentioned. We have seen that an improved connectivity will not only be key to the economic recovery, but will also allow airlines to address some of the previous existing challenges, which have just been worsened by the pandemic. But more concretely, what can airlines do at this stage? The first thing is to rethink the networks, focusing on increasing frequencies and improving hub connectivity. Second point is selecting the right aircraft for the right mission. Indeed, a right-sized aircraft will enable airlines to serve a same market with more frequencies compared to if they were operating this with a larger aircraft. And this is going to improve overall load factors and profitability, which we discussed in the market outlook. Third, this pandemic really is offering an unprecedented opportunity for change and innovation. And I think that through history, we have seen how it is during crisis that major changes and revolutions have happened. I would like to mention here a few ideas. So the first one is that at the moment, there are very interesting pre-owned opportunities for second-hand aircraft. The second one is if there is a moment to make structural changes, it is now that the demand is low. And third, I would say that if we want African aviation to grow in a sustainable way and have a positive social and economic impact on the continent, then connectivity is not something nice to have, but it's a must-have. And finally, it's the first time since the 70s and the 80s when the 320 and the 737 family were developed that a state-of-the-art clean sheet aircraft 100 to 150 seater is designed. We are talking of the Embraer E2 Profit Hunter family delivering outstanding performance. And what do I mean by outstanding performance? I mean a lower cost per trip compared to larger narrow bodies with a similar cost per trip. And this is the real game changer. So let's use this unique opportunity to embark connectivity and make it the catalyst for future aviation and socio-economic growth in Africa. Thank you very much.